citizens abroad. And first off, I'd like to thank the American International Club of Brussels for inviting us here to talk a little bit about our organization and our advocacy work. I understand that a lot of you listening in today are not Americans, but hopefully some of you are Americans, or you possibly are dual nationals. So our organization is nonpartisan and nonprofit, and our mission is really to address the legislative and regulatory issues that affect Americans living and working overseas. As some of you are probably aware, when the U.S. passes legislation, oftentimes the focus is very much on domestic issues, and the community that sometimes is not taken into account or not thoroughly thought through are the Americans who are living overseas. And our organization really is here in Washington, D.C., advocating to the Congress for that community. So a lot of you are very familiar with the concept of citizenship-based taxation, which came up in Cam's little video about FATCA. And that has been around for many years and has been an issue that ACA has been involved in and advocating for. However, we have also worked on issues of passage of U.S. citizenship, voting rights, access to Medicare, things like the windfall elimination provision, and this has to do with if you are receiving Social Security benefits in the United States at the same time that you may be receiving benefits from a foreign pension. So we do have other issues that we're involved in, but over time, taxation obviously has become a very big issue for Americans overseas. And as Cam's little video explained, with the advent of the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act and the reporting requirements there for U.S. citizens on their tax return and for their foreign banks, the sort of reanimation of the readministration of the FBAR that has been around since the 70s, but really when FATCA came into effect, the IRS and Treasury really looked back and said, you know, who has been filing these foreign bank account reports? So all that has made it extremely complex. Many of you may be experiencing this, and costly for Americans living and working overseas. So ACA has been on the forefront of this battle, so to speak. And we really believe that the next step in making residence-based taxation, which is the model that is used by all industrialized countries in the world, that is to say, if the income is not earned in the United States or in connection to U.S. economic activity, it should not be taxed by the United States. So we believe that the next step is to have hearings, and specifically to have the House Ways and Means Committee hold hearings on this issue. And we have a lot of groundswell for that. And that has really built because of the work that ACA has been doing here in Washington, D.C. We went back about 2.5 years ago, and we said, a lot of organizations, a lot of groups, a lot of people have been talking about a move to RBT from citizenship-based taxation, but has anybody really sat down, taken a look at the tax code and said, where in the tax code do you need to make those changes? No one had. So we did that work. We went in and we said, where exactly do you have to go in and change things so that you get to a residence-based system of taxation? We did that work. It's not a piece of legislation. It's not quote unquote a proposal. It is simply a side-by-side. And that has been a really useful document, because in offices, they can take a look at that and they can say, well, I agree that all these things, I think we should do them. Not so sure about this element of the tax code. Maybe we have to think about that. So it gives them really a roadmap of where to go. With that proposal or that roadmap, we hired revenue estimators here in Washington, D.C., a group called District Economics Group. And what revenue estimators do is they cost out what any piece of legislation is going to cost or save the government. So this is key. This is key to, sorry about that. This is key to any piece of legislation that needs to be passed by the Congress. Oftentimes you'll hear that legislation is passed and they didn't do a revenue estimate on it. But in particular for our issue, because it is so, the Congress is, I don't want to say unaware of Americans overseas, because they're very much aware now of Americans overseas, but certain perceptions about the community, very wealthy people, that it's about tax evasion. It becomes super important for us to have a number to be able to say, of the taxpayers who are currently contributing, if you move to RBT, this is what it's going to cost the government. So we did that exercise. We raised funds to do that, and we were able to get it to a zero cost over a 10-year period. So all that work, ACA has been going into congressional offices, speaking with champions, and there are champions in the Congress. Some of you may be aware that Congressman Holding, a Republican from North Carolina, he actually introduced into Congress a piece of legislation called the Tax Fairness for Americans Abroad Act. And that was very much an outline, conceptual outline of residence-based taxation. Didn't have a lot of details, and purposely so. It was really meant to put a marker down and to say, this is the concept, let's start talking about it, and to get the tax committees looking at that approach and working through documents like the one that ACA has provided all these offices. So our work is in congressional offices. More importantly, it's in the tax writing committee offices on both the Democratic and Republican side, and it's with the Joint Committee of Taxation. So what's ACA going to be doing post-election, and what do we see moving ahead? Again, our real charge after the election is going to be, obviously to look at who is the presidential candidate, but more importantly, what's happened in the House, what's happened in the Senate, and what the staffing is going to be like on a lot of the important committees that we are talking to, including House Ways and Means, in particular, the Select Revenue Committee. So we'll be doing a lot of that investigative work and finding out who's going to be appointed to committees, going in, making them familiar with ACA if they don't already know us, because we have really a great track record and know a lot of these offices already. And we are going to continue on a push to hold hearings, because what is critical now is to put this on official record with the committees. We go in and talk to these offices. We tell them what the problems are, but nothing makes it real like hearings where they can get our data and it's put on record. They can get actual individuals who are living the experience, testifying, and other groups and organizations out there that have been doing good work on this front as well. So we will really be assessing post-election the makeup of the House and the Senate, the makeup of the committee assignments, but we will absolutely be continuing to push on hearings. And for all of you who are listening in or may, play this presentation back, I encourage you all to go to our website, americansabroad.org. There is a campaign, a write-in campaign, calling for hearings. It's really simple to use. You just go in there, you put your voting address, it automatically brings up your representatives, and it'll bring up other committee members, and you just send in a message requesting hearings. We've already had 17,000 messages go into Congress, on this petition. And it's really, really helped when we do our follow-up meetings and knock on doors and talk to people face to face. Now, there's been a lot less of that going on in Washington, D.C. of late, but we still have kept that up even during COVID. We're doing distance meetings, Zoom calls. I just had a call with people at the IRS, with the State Department. So all that work is going on, and hopefully when we're out of COVID and we can travel more and have more meetings, we'll be back up in Congress. But our work post-election is really to be continuing on with our push for RBT, and in particular with holding hearings.